Months ago, Gus was sitting in his office, just as he usually was at this hour, as he quickly did some paperwork for Nightmare, a band from Salem he was managing. The record producer heard a knock on his door. "Come in," Gus invited. The door swung open, revealing 3 young women, one with pink hair, wearing all black clothing, one with black hair wearing a t-shirt and a skull on it, and finally a blonde. Gus noticed that the blonde was wearing a nightmarish t-shirt, which he found quite charming. It was nice to see someone appreciate a band that he managed to be proud of. "Hello, what can I do for you?" Gus inquired. "We've got some talent you're gonna sign," the black-haired girl cryptically said. "Well, that's not the way it works, I'm afraid," Gus chuckled, with a hint of nervousness in his voice. "I'll certainly give them a listen, though, and see if I like them." "Oh no, you're going to sign them whenever you want to or not," the blonde girl growled. "Excuse me?" Gus began to get a little defensive, despite trying to maintain the confident demeanor. He still felt quite nervous. He had no idea what these girls were in, and didn't understand why they were thinking of any way they owned the place. "You heard her. You're going to sign this band," the black-haired girl snapped. "And if I refuse?" Gus scoffed. "And who do these ladies think they are, ordering them around like they own the place?" "Well, you see, if you don't want that," the pink-haired girl said, "perhaps we should have started with the introduction. I'm Bridget, this is Nia, and the blonde is Sam. We're witches." "Witches?" Gus chuckled. "Yes, witches, and we're making things very difficult for you if you refuse," Nia said. "I'd like to see you try," Gus threatened. The witches didn't exist, and as far as they're concerned, there was little to no fear. Perhaps there was some hazing ritual for Salem State sorority, or some drunken college girls thinking they were being funny. "Well, if you insist," Sam shrugged, as she pointed her finger and right arm hand at him. All of a sudden, he felt a burning sensation on his back. The sensation continued to grow stronger and stronger, causing him to reach back and feel where the pain was coming from. Once his hand approached the painful area, and his hand feeling a searing burn, similar to what one would feel from touching a hot oven. He immediately pulled back his hand away. "Yeah, and you might not want to do that, given Sam just set you on fire," Nia cackled evilly. "Ha ha ha." At that moment, Gus saw smoke in the air. It must have been coming from his back. The pain was getting even more excruciating by the second. "Please, I'll do anything you want," Gus sobbed, as the fire continued to burn its back. With a snap of her fingers, the blonde brutalizer put the fire out. "You just made the right decision. We could do a lot worse to you if we wanted. You just seem a smart fellow. So, you don't want that, right?" Bridget smirked cruelly. "No, I don't," Gus exclaimed, his back still radiating from the pain from being on fire. "So here's what you're going to do then. You're going to schedule an appointment for a band named the Hexed Girls tomorrow. When they come in, you're going to immediately love whatever they play, sign them, and become their manager," Bridget said. "We can't have them wondering how we're connected with you either. So we're going to need you to pretend to be Bridget's father," Nia informed. "What?" Gus exclaimed. It was clear that the witches weren't aimlessly wandering around and torturing people for no reason. They had a detailed plan. "This is so immoral. Why are you girls doing this?" "Oh, you can let us worry about that," Nia smirked. "Your part is simple and easy. See, and since she's your daughter after all, Bridget will be around to help more a lot. You know, just to make sure you're following within your promise. And if you're not, we have ways of figuring stuff out. Like, for example, you've been working on the nightmare paperwork all day, and you've got it done by the end of the day, right?" Bridget had a slight smile on her face. Gus's heart leaped. The girls hadn't even looked at his desk, and there was no way that he could have had known about the deadline for paperwork, unless they could read his thoughts. "So we are agreed? You're going to pretend to be Bridget's father and manage the Hex Girls from now on?" Bridget recapped. "Just to remind you, if you don't agree, the other choice and result will be killing you." What they were asking him to do was so immoral. Gus had talent in art very seriously. He had no idea if the Hex girls were in the Backstreet Boys or if they just sounded like a chaotic carnival catastrophe. So he didn't feel right about building in the career of his lies. What choice did he have in thought? Either they could be a conflict of free witches' master plan, or he would have been tortured and killed in many ways he could have imagined. Yes, we're agreed, Gus Sombler said. Good. Now, we have a concert at Jack's to get to, Bridget grinned evilly. Present day. Thorne felt so panicked about the events that had transpired that she hadn't really felt the joy of the concert. How was that even possible since the entire career would be based on free witches manipulating everything? Perhaps the most frightening thing of all is that if she couldn't tell Luna and Dusk about what happened, the witches could read her thoughts. Possibly. If so, she would have to tell them private. Bridget and Sam might know, and then she and Gus will mostly be tortured or dead. Possibly both. She'd faced witches before, but this was different. Ben and Sarah couldn't read her thoughts or anticipate her every move. Besides, she wouldn't even have to know about how to defeat Ben or Sarah. If not for one of the teens, she had believed the orange sweater girl, one's name was Velma, encouraging her to read the spell right out of the book. Doing okay? Luna patted Thorne's back, as if 7 of them had begun the concert venue together. You seemed a little off during the concert. Oh shit! Thorne exclaimed, panicking. Did I mess up and not notice? No, don't worry, Luna chuckled. You seemed a little less energized than normal, that's all. I don't think anyone in the crowd have noticed. Oh, Thorne felt a sigh of relief. She would have to be more careful not to alert Dusk or Luna that anything was up. It was the worst feeling in the world, having to pretend you were okay with your friends when you're actually in serious danger from something you knew about. But she couldn't tell them. I'm just feeling really tired from all the driving. Well, we'll have to take a break tomorrow, girls. We have to drive to Minneapolis when everyone's up, and then we can all sleep as late as well. The showing in Minneapolis isn't until the next day, so we could just explore or relax when we got there, Gus exclaimed. Thorne was surprised how calm Gus remained despite of what just happened. He had totally just looked like his normal self, and just as he had thought throughout this time, Thorne knew him. Awesome, where are we staying tonight? Luna asked. We're staying at the Courtyard in by Metairie, Detroit. It's a very precious 21-floor hotel, which had been open since 1985, Gus informed. Oh, that sounds fancy, Sam exclaimed. Gus was still walking with the travel brochure, which Thorne found endearing. She wished that she could be just as calm as him about the situation, but she supposed that he had gotten months to used to playing this part. He had done it so quite well. Admittedly, Thorne really wished of all the events of the past few months hadn't been staged. She almost didn't want to come into terms with the fact that they were. These have been some of the past few months of their lives, and it was all a lie. Thorne slept horribly at the hotel that night. When she was tossing and turning, she was up trying to process through everything that happened over the past few months. It wasn't helping Thorne that she was feeling gross from a little sweaty, probably a side effect of her worrying crazy. The black-haired Hex girl tried to come up with rationales of how certain enjoyable things have happened, like the Autumn Fest or recording their album and music video, weren't a part of Bridget, Nia, and Sam's trickery, but she feared that they probably were. Most of all, Thorne worried that what the hell she was going to do now that she knew all this. Presumably Bridget, Nia, and Sam weren't just making them famous for the fun of it. She remembers Sam even made a comment that they were so close. They almost positively had some rationing behind it, and it was just some of the grander plan. She had just wished that she knew it was. Either way, Thorne couldn't just sit there and let all 3 witches do whatever they had planned. She didn't really see much of a choice, especially given that she didn't know why they were doing this. The witches could read her minds to at least some extent, since they knew about the dream Thorne had, despite her not telling anyone. If they could do that, what hope does she have? If she tried to come up with a plan to stop herself from the witches from torturing her and Gus, she felt like she could lay there for hours, stuck in her head, trying to process through every interaction that if she can gain some insight onto why they're onto this, and if anything had happened, the result of her own success rather than whatever manipulation the witches had done could make the band famous. Thorn knew that she probably had gotten at least 2 or 3 hours of sleep most of the night, but she was tired of just laying there, so she felt anxious about the situation, and she wouldn't sit any longer. Looking at the clock, it was 7:04 a.m., so breakfast would be available. Maybe she would just grab something to drink and then come back up to bed. She just needed the move. The Hex Girl quickly changed out of her pajamas into her old I Saw a Ghost of Oakhaven and Live t-shirt and some jeans, as she took the look at least presentable when she went downstairs in case she ran across anyone. Luna was still sleeping comfortably next to her, cuddled up in a purple blanket she brought along. Dusk looked cozily bundled up in her sheets as well. As she was fast asleep, Thorn tried to creep out of the room as quietly as she could as to not wake them. As Thorn walked down the elevator, she quickly passed a man carrying a duffel bag with a backpack, as well as a blanket and pillow. She was terrified of running into Bridget, Nia, or Sam, so she tried to get a better elevator quickly as she could. Because of her mind of racing still of her thoughts, she had one of her frightening ones. If Dusk hadn't allowed Bridget to go into their room, and then now how Bridget be able to get in without anyone giving her the key? She quickly vanquished this all from her mind, telling herself that she probably just left the door partly open in carelessness or something. Ford wasn't fully convinced as the explanation, but at least it was as far as less terrifying than any alternatives that she could think of. Thorn quickly got to the breakfast area downstairs and saw an array of bagels, muffins, toast, sandwiches, and cereal. She saw a pitcher of orange juice, her least favorite kind, admittedly, that was nearly empty. Thorn poured herself a little bit remaining, which resulted in nearly a full glass. She quickly drank, but she was getting more creeped out by the moment with the fear of the witches popping out of nowhere, so she wanted to get back there safely to her room as quickly as she could. Maybe her room wasn't exactly safe, though, if Bridget had used her powers to burst in the room. Thorn couldn't shut her mind off. Million possibilities ran through her head, all the more horrible things that the witches could do to her. She tried to quench her anxiety by telling herself that they wouldn't do anything if Dusk and Luna were around, since they were very clear that they did not want 2 Hex Girls to know that they were witches. Thorn all had to do is to stick by Dusk and Luna at all times, so that way the witches wouldn't do anything to her. Thorn scurried upstairs to her safety of Luna and Dusk. She was feeling herself getting a little tired from the constant worrying. Using her key, she quickly snuck back into the room and plopped her onto the pillow. Maybe she just posed in bed nap. As silly as it sounds, as soon as her head hit the pillow, Thorn was fast asleep. Thorn woke up feeling disoriented. The first thing she did was look at the clock, which read 9:54. She apparently slept longer than she thought she would. She was happy, though. She needed the sleep. As she slowly woke up to adjust the surroundings of the dark hotel room, she flipped on the lights. Dusk and Luna weren't in the room, and they were most likely eating breakfast. Although as 3 hours from the consequence, otherwise more than worrying, since she was less worrying about every waking moment, which was quite nice. Thorn wanted to get downstairs as quickly as she could. The last thing she needed was Bridget coming into her room for one of her rummaging through sessions while Thorn was there. Thorn put on her dark purple and tennis shoes on. Just as she was about to head out the door, she heard a crinkle under her feet. Feeling confused, Thorn bent over to see what she stepped on, and appeared to be some sort of note. The black-haired Hex Girl picked up the paper lying on the floor. Her eyes immediately gravitated towards the bottom of who it was from. Her heart raced when she saw who it was signed. Gus. Fearing that one of the witches might try and read her thoughts, Thorn ran straight for the bathroom. It was an embarrassing place to read the note, but maybe her being in the bathroom would prevent them from reading her thoughts, as if they were trying to. Reading someone's thoughts when they were going to the bathroom isn't something they likely do. At least Thorn hoped. Seeing that it was a pretty long note, Thorn sat down on the tile floor and began to read what Gus had written. Thorn, let me start off by saying that I cannot tell you how sorry I am, whether it was in my control or not. I knowingly have been leading you girls on this for the past 3 months, even if it wasn't due to me being threatened. It was not right of me to do, and I may never forgive myself. Given what happened last night, I figure you might want to know a bit of backstory. I don't know much, but I'll tell you what I know. One day before I discovered you, Bridget, Nia, and Sam came into my office and tortured me until I agreed to sign you as a band. This being said, I want to tell you how do I think you have talent, and I generally love your music. The sad thing is that they wouldn't even have let me use the torture to get me to sign you. You girls are generally talented, and I really enjoyed my time with you. However, I'm afraid to tell you that your rise of fame was a matter of them manipulating to the charts. Your song would appear on them. They predicted the position on your album chart, and each day when it was released, those were exactly the numbers charted at. Sadly, this can only lead me to believe that your song's entire performance, as a result of Bridget, Nia, and Sam, using their powers to manipulate the charts. In other words, that is to say, none of this fame you've seen is real. I wish I knew more, but that is all I know. I don't know what they have planned, but it cannot be good. While hearing you found out about Bridget, Nia, and Sam being witches last night was quite frightening for me. It also gave me some hope. When they first forced me to participate this charade, the girls had told me that they never wanted you to find out that they were witches. That was the fact that you found out tells me that they slipped me up, meaning that perhaps less powerful than I thought. I know this is a great risk that comes to writing you this to give you this note, but I felt like I had to try. The only alternative is sitting there and waiting to find out what they have planned, and which cannot be good. We cannot go off on our own at this point. Otherwise, Bridget, Nia, and Sam will suspect we're planning something. I would like to propose something, however we could attempt to meet at night, when everyone is sleeping. If you want to risk it, meet me at 12 blocks north of our hotel in Indianapolis at exactly 1 minute before midnight tonight. We cannot sit here completely, watch these fiends hurt Dusk and Luna. Sincerely, Gus. Thorn felt like her heart was going to pound out of her chest after finished reading that note. Meeting Gus at midnight seemed like a big risk, and not one she is willing to take. She just found out that 3 of her biggest fans who she trusts were evil witches, and who could read her minds. So she wasn't exactly eager to test out the extent of her powers reached. But of course, her mind was swirling with so many differences. She tried to push them all out of her head. She needed to get down to breakfast. Anyone on her, whatever it be Dusk or Luna, or the witches. She knew that she couldn't let the witches get on her hands on it. So she tore up the note into tiny shreds, flushed it down the toilet, so she feared that perhaps it would be bad for plumbing. But it seemed to be far worse if Bridget, Nia, and Sam saw it and killed them as a result. Reading that note from Gus did have some hope, however. He was right. After all, unstoppable beings don't make foolish mistakes, like sneaking into people's rooms for a few seconds, after you think you're gone, only to have someone catch to you. Bridget had screwed up once, which means, or any of them, could again. Thorn saw her friends and fiends gathered around a small square table eating breakfast. Bridget had everything on her bagel and butter, and Nia nibbled on her regular bagel with strawberry jam, whilst Gus and Luna had muffins, and Dusk and Sam had some cereal. Thorn switched it up a bit this morning and had a Danish, since there was no milk to go with her cereal. "Good morning, Thorn," Bridget chirped, as if she hadn't threatened to kill her the previous night. "How did you sleep?" "Oh, just okay. I was kind of restless last night," Thorn said, realizing that she didn't want to give up the vibe that everything was up. "All this traveling from the hotel is kind of weird." "You'll be far more comfortable by the next hotel," Gus said. For a minute, Thorn wondered that if it was a reference to the next one that she'd feel better after sneaking out and talking to him tonight. But she quickly pushed it out of her mind. It turned out that it wasn't the case. "We'll be staying in a luxurious hotel, Ami Servant Hotel, which had been open for over 100 years, and it'll be the finest hotels yet." "Oh my gosh, Daddy, you always pick the best places." Bridget smiled, wrapping her tightly arms around her father, and gave him a hug, pressing her face up against his chest. Thorn shuddered a bit. That was probably looked a cute family moment to everyone else was. In reality, it was a subtle way to make Gus feel as weird as possible. She wondered if Bridget was only doing this to be sadistic, or perhaps she was trying to overcompensate that Thorn had found out. Thorn really hoped it was later, because that would Veligusite Gus's fury that Bridget wasn't as powerful as Thorn feared. So, how far again is it to Minneapolis? Nia inquired. 5 hours, I think, Gus responded. It's between bites of his cereal. That's not long, Sam exclaimed. It was weird to watch them interact like nothing happened, particularly Sam and Nia. All the darkness of the events from the previous night may have not been in the air, but Thorn was still felt a little terrified than ever. She thought that she was doing a pretty good job. Sure, it didn't show, though. What do we want to do when we get there? Luna inquired. Sleep? Thorn joked. You could do whatever you want, but I'm not sleeping the day away. I've got a whole day in this city, and we've got to live it up. Dusk replied. I wish we were doing a show, though. It's so aggravating in a rock out in front of thousands of people. That's not the word I would use, but okay, Luna responded. What would you use? Dusk inquired. Exhausting? Luna teased, in a response causing Dusk to roll her eyes. That's when we were even in Indianapolis? Sam inquired. Well, there's an art museum at the Central Cana, and the park and the zoo, off the top of my head, Gus listed. An art museum would be fun, Luna offered. Yeah, I'd love to do something like that, Thorn spoke up. She admittedly just wanted to make sure that there wasn't even been over a time she had to be alone, to maybe do anything, have structured activities out in public, so that there was any chance of uncomfortable situation with witches. How about the museum at the park? Maybe we could do a zoo and Central Canal if we had time today or tomorrow. I believe the park is about 10 minutes away from the art museum, so that could work, Gus informed. How do you remember all that information about everywhere we're traveling, Gus? Dusk asked. Well, I've remembered through these cities a few times during touring with other bands, Gus blushed, looking embarrassed that she remembered all these significant details. My memory is excellent in remembering stuff like this. Don't be embarrassed. I think it's wicked cool you remember that stuff, Nia complimented. Thorn wondered how it felt for Gus to completely fake all the tour and after all the real ones he'd taken. She wondered if Nia was faking her compliment, though Thorn was pretty sure she was. That was the most terrifying to Thorn that was of all of them, including Gus, playing their parts as well, if and most of it for Thorn finding out nothing real the previous night, she even hadn't happened.